You're listening to the B&H Photography Podcast. For over 40 years, B&H has been the professional source for photography, video, audio, and more. For your favorite gear, news, and reviews, visit us at bnh.com or download the B&H app to your iPhone or Android device. Now here's your host, Alan Weitz.
Greetings and welcome to the B&H Photography Podcast. This week's episode has been produced in collaboration with Leica Camera, and we thank them for their support. Today, we welcome to the program photographer Cheriss May. Cheriss is an editorial and portrait photographer based in Washington, D.C. Her work has been published in O Magazine, the White House website, the New York Times, People Magazine, Politico, and other international publications. She currently has an exhibition, Soul Connection, at the Leica Gallery in Los Angeles, California. We're going to be talking about that more later in the show. Cheriss is also on the board of directors of Focus on the Story. She's the past president of Women Photojournalists of Washington, WPOW, co-chair of photography at the National Press Club, not to mention an Adobe education leader. Cheriss is part of the White House Press Pool. She's an adjunct professor at her alma mater, Howard University, and we are absolutely delighted to welcome her to the show. Welcome.
Man, I'm gonna have to take you guys with me. What a intro! Thank you.
Well,
for having me.
we do have a little package we put together, and it's affordable. You can pay it off over 12 months. But we'll talk about during the break.
Now, anyway, our hype team services, yeah, sure.
Cheriss, before we get into our list of questions that we already put together, you just came back from Tulsa, where there was the commemoration of the massacre that occurred there 100 years ago. And it's really an interesting thing because many people weren't even aware of it. And it was just horrendous event that occurred. And now it's coming back out and it's being recognized for exactly for what it was. What's your takeaway from that? Because that must have been a very powerful experience to be there to cover this event.
Yeah, so I just got back from Tulsa last night, and they had a host of events with survivors of the Tulsa Race Massacre and descendants of those survivors. And I was there documenting the centennial commemoration. Very powerful, very emotional. For me personally, I have family that is from Oklahoma. So I was able to actually meet some family while I was there and found out that my second cousin is a historian, and she interviewed a lot of the survivors before they passed. And she documented that, and it's in a gallery there in Tulsa. And she also has some things here in the African American Museum in Washington, D.C.
Did you know about your cousin's work before you went
I
there?
did not. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say her name. Her name is Eddie Faye Gates. Mm-hmm. And so I met her son, Derek, my cousin, and we were able to connect and, talk. And I actually interviewed him and took some portraits of him. And it was very, very moving, very spiritual, very emotional. The survivors who are Mother Fletcher, who's 107 years old, and her brother, Uncle Red, who's 100. Mother Fletcher and her brother, Uncle Red, were here in Washington, D.C., where I covered the hearing where they testified at the Capitol. And so for me, that pilgrimage or journey started here in Washington, D.C., and then I went to Tulsa that next week, and I was there for 8 days.
Just to recap for a moment, if you go back 100 years ago to Tulsa, Oklahoma, there was a Black community that flourished there. They started arriving, I would say, late 1800s, from what I understand, and quickly set up a community of businesses and community services that was powerful, very successful. And I read at one point, I just from my own reading, that they estimated that every dollar that originated in that community went through 7 Black hands before a white hand touched it. So it really was a true flourishing community that was self-sufficient and growing. It was called the Black Wall Street. Mm-hmm. And then because of some kind of a misunderstanding and social issues that were going on, then an event happened where things just went out of hand, and this entire community was incinerated to a point not only with angry mobs with guns, but literally there were planes flying overhead, privately owned and corporate owned aircraft that were dropping dynamite onto the crowds as they were trying to
Yes.
escape. So this was not just, a little flare up. This was a major massacre. And in fact, it's described that this was the first aerial attack on American citizens from the air. And it was our own citizens against our own citizens.
Yes, definitely. And there were so many people that were killed. They're still, when I was there, they were doing excavation where they're discovering even more bodies because the numbers were underestimated in terms of how many people were killed during that massacre. And they're still unearthing bodies that were just dumped in mass grave sites there. So there was a lot going on. And it in the matter of, it started on May 31st, 100 years ago, where, like you said, the planes came in and dropped the dynamite and the bombs from the air. The businesses were burned to the ground. People were killed. And then afterwards, they put the residents who were left into these internment camps. And so that's where they were after they burned their homes and their businesses down, from hotels to a movie theater to it had every single thing in this community that was needed. And like you said, the dollar circulated within that community at least 7 times. So it was a very successful community that was able to thrive until the night of May 31st, 100 years ago.
And that success is also one of the reasons why there were so many eyes on it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And there were many who did not like the fact that it was so successful, and there was a lot of wealth that was generated. And so that's a lot of the issue now, is because after those things were destroyed, and now you have some of the last known survivors who, are still, they're still here, they're still living, but then you have their descendants, and they are not able to benefit from that work in those businesses that were successful, at this point. So
there were no reparations either, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
No, that's exactly what a big point of contention is for that, because not only that, you have fundraising that's going on, and it's become I saw while I was there, it's becoming a tourism, like a tourist stop almost. And so there's money coming in from tourism now that is, off of the stories of the survivors and, the descendants of the survivors, yet, they're not seeing anything from telling this horrific story.
What about a rebuilding? Has anything significant come out of the ashes? In other words, was there any attempt to really rebuild what was there, or was it kind of said that this just can't exist here anymore? This is just, it's over.
There's definitely a rebuild that's happened, and that's still going on. When you go along the street, they have these identification plates that are in the ground, and it tells you what business was there, and it tells you if it was rebuilt, reopened, or if it was abandoned.
And Cheriss, was this an assignment or self-assigned, or did you do that just because you wanted to get out there and as you said, make a pilgrimage and document it yourself?
Yeah, so it started out as a self-assigned, but then I was commissioned by an organization called Faith and Politics, and they do these pilgrimages. So they're working on a documentary. So I was taking, documenting with stills. And some of those stills will be used in the documentary.
Oh, great. Actually, that kind of leads to one of my questions, and maybe we'll get back to the one about, starting as a graphic designer. But, you're a freelancer, and your work appears regularly in a lot of newspapers, well-known newspapers, websites, magazines. You work for the White House or at the White House. Can you talk a little bit about how your assignments come to you? And I imagine it could come from any different direction, but just a little bit about that aspect of your work and how you field these, and if something is not coming in, do you take a self-assignment? Do you make the time to make the work, and just along those lines?
Yeah, and that's a great question, especially for freelancers, because I get that question sometimes from other freelancers. And I would say that's a combination. There are some things that that are very personal to me. And so they're personal projects and I self-assign, and I feel like it's an important story that needs to get out. And so I pursue those, and I go out and I, meet people. I, figure out what what story is being told here. And so I'm my own editor and do my own assignment. So I'm primarily a photographer, but there are some instances where I will write, and I'll do that as well.
Yeah, I noticed that, and I definitely want to ask a question about that. But let's say, for example, you've decided on a story, or you're investigating a story, and you realize you have something going here. Is it at that point then that you'll reach out to editors or contacts, or creative directors, people or how's that work?
Yeah, no. A lot of times, what happens is I'll go first and see what's what. So I'll initially go out and just kind of get some document, get some images, and see if there is a story there. See if it's something that, a number of the publications that I work with, they cover certain things or certain stories I know that they're interested in, or that would be, their readers are interested in hearing more about. So, I don't know. For instance, there was a story that I did that was published in the New York Times on family protest. And what happened was my cousin Gianni Palmer has two young sons, 8, and at the time they were at 8 and 5. And so this was right around the time after George Floyd's murder, and his sons were having a hard time with this, and there was fear, and they couldn't understand, what was going on, because it's everywhere. Like, you can't escape it. As much as you try to kind of shield your kids from certain things, it was everywhere. So the oldest son, 8, came to my cousin and said, came to his father and asked him, said to him he was scared, and he was scared that what happened to George Floyd could happen to them. And his youngest son came to him and said, "Why do white people hate Black people?" So my cousin knew that he had to do something, and decided he didn't want to take them to where the major protests were going on in Washington, D.C., because for safety concerns. So what he decided to do was to do a family march right there in his neighborhood. And so he had reached out to me and told me these conversations that he had with my cousins, his sons. And he invited me to come on this march where they were just going to, march in his neighborhood and, stay close. But he just wanted to show his sons that there's nothing to fear, and that there are more people that are with you than are against you. So I came, and I, of course, brought, one of my small cameras, and just to kind of document. And as I went, I saw how powerful it was. And I saw how other people started to join in, and how he invited other families, other friends with kids, and they brought their kids out. And so I came back. They did this every day for like 2 or 3 weeks. And so I went out the second day, and I saw how it grew, and that even more people were coming out, because as people, came out, they invited their friends and their, families with kids. And so at that point I was like, okay, this is a powerful story. And so I reached out to the editors at New York Times that I work with, that I've done work with and do work with. And I reached out to them, and I shared some of the images from when I went out, and they were like, "This is a great story." And so they said, "Yeah, we want to publish the story. We think it would be good for our parenting section." And so that's how that happened.
Interesting. And is that fair to say that you have a pretty wide range of connections in terms of editors. And when you have a story that seems to fit their needs, you just reach out. I mean, is there, I think a lot of photographers maybe get a little intimidated or they don't have the contacts at that point, or even if they do, they maybe don't trust the story or have, the courage, let's put it that way, to reach out to editors. And is this really what's needed? Is it just kind of knocking on doors?
Well, actually, I would say it's the opposite. And I get more assignments and commissions than I do pitching stories. So it just so happens that the way it's worked for me, I don't know about other people, but the way that it's worked for me is as I do work, as I do stories, as I'm doing these things, then you build this relationship with the editors, and they know, like, basically if they send you out, they can trust that you're going to get what's needed, for the story, or they like your style of shooting, or, things like that, or how you work. So it's a lot about relationship and building those relationships and, kind of forging that and maintaining that.
And when you do write a story, in addition to doing the photography, does that take priority in your mind's eye? And how does that affect the images that you're creating when you're taking that, deep of a dive into the story?
It's kind of going on at the same time, honestly. I try to take really good notes, and a lot of times I'll record people on video because sometimes there's something there that I may miss in, my note taking, or even with the photos that I want to make sure that I do it justice, or I do them justice in telling the story. So a lot of times I'll record, and then when I go back home, when I'm done, I'm just sitting there, just kind of digesting everything. I may see something else or something deeper, something further that needs to be explored. And then I'll, next time I meet with them or go out, then I'm able to explore that. So this particular story I'm thinking about, where I wrote it and took the photos, which started out as just photos, was a food insecurity story that I did for the New York Times.
Right. I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that one was, the editor actually came to me on that one and said, you know what, we're hearing that food insecurity is becoming a big issue in your area, the area where you are. Is it something you want to work with us on this? Just kind of explore it. And I'm like, yeah, like that's, something really important. And, I always want to feel like the work that I'm doing in some way is making a difference, some kind of way. Either it's bringing attention to, something that's important, or it's getting a story out that hasn't gotten out. Like, as big as the Tulsa race massacre was, still there are a lot of people who don't know about it and don't know, a lot of what went on and what's going on now. So with the food insecurity, the editor asked me if this is something I wanted to investigate. And I said, sure. So then it became something where I, went out and, talked to some people, connected with some organizations, just kind of chased it down, so to speak.
And is that a resource that you often turn to when you're looking to find subjects? Do you have a network of organizations or social service groups that you can kind of find a contact in, and then they can direct you? Yeah,
that's a great question. Sometimes I do. Most times I don't. I don't know if I would say most times, but with the food insecurity, I didn't really have. There was no connection, so to speak, with that. So it took some work in identifying, and then once I connected, I went in through a couple of church organizations, because I knew that there were churches that were active in the community. And that's just something I saw personally. So I knew that they were really active in the community in terms of giving out meals and different social services. So that's where I decided, you know what, that would probably be a good place to start. And they probably have connections to other organizations that are a part of this whole thing. And sure enough, that's what happened. I reached out to a church called Kingdom Fellowship here in Maryland, and they connected me they filled in a lot of the information that I needed. And they were able to connect me with, okay, so where we get our, where their food comes from that they distribute. And so then I was able they gave me information to connect with those organizations. And I got connected to the Capital Area Food Bank through them. And then I was able to kind of connect the dots and move it along.
There's a good lesson in there. And I think that goes for anybody who's out there, trying to earn a living with a camera. And that's that your resources, you really have to think. Don't expect things to come floating to you. You got to, okay, what's the system here? What's making it work? Where is there a central pin here that I could hook into? And I think also if you're a writer, that also helps you because it puts more questions out there that lead you closer to where you have to be as a photographer as well. You have more questions that you could ask and maybe even other contacts that you could reach out to.
Mm-hmm. And then I would say as well, a good thing is to stay abreast of the news and just see what's going on. What are the issues? What are the hot button things, that are happening or people are talking about? And it also, for me, like I love connecting with people. I love people. I love talking to people that I don't know. I love learning things that I don't know. Like that really, on a personal level, really fulfills me. And so I'm that type of person that I strike up conversations with people and they strike up conversations with me. I don't know if I just have like that face or, some kind of spirit or energy that they connect to, that they just tell me things. Like I can just be out somewhere, having lunch or something, and somebody will just start talking to me and like telling me their whole story. And I'm like, okay, wow, like that's great. And then I get their information and, that becomes someone where I may explore something, for a story or something. But and I ask questions, and sometimes I don't even ask questions. They just tell me, they just open up with these things. I'm like, wow, that is really powerful. Like we were supposed to meet today. So it's that kind of thing. For me, it feels very spiritual. And I try to really stay in tune, with that. And I often say, and I often think, like, I want to be open to those stories that I'm supposed to be telling.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. And I like the way that you link, this idea of your personality, the spirituality and the work, because they do blend together. And if you can bring that aspect into the work that you're doing and get that word out there, word and photos, you're doing a great job. I want to maybe jump backwards a little bit, though, because we're talking a little bit about the reporting aspect and the writing, but you started as a graphic designer.
That's exactly what I was just going to come back to also. Yeah, there's a third connection here about communication. Yeah. It's all about communications, too. Yeah. All of it.
So, so can you talk a little bit about that and how that, were you taking pictures back then also, or did the graphic design nature or the graphic design work lead you to take these pictures? And what did you carry from that into the work that you're doing with the camera?
Sure. Taking it back to as a child, like I always had like a little camera. My parents started me out with a little Kodak film camera, and I would be that kid that would show up to all the family events, taking pictures, and then I'd, get excited to take my film in to get developed and, that kind of thing. So I always had a love for that, but I always had a love for just everything creative. So I would draw, paint, I remember like coloring, just different things. And so I knew that I wanted to do something creatively. I just didn't know what, but I thought it was going to be with graphic design because I started to explore just doing things graphically and continuing that. And so I pursued advertising in school with a minor in electronic studio, which is pretty much graphic design. Never thought about journalism. Never thought about photography as a career. At the same time as I'm doing this, I'm still taking photos. So that photography has always been there, just kind of in the background more so.
It's it's not unusual to. There are many well-known photographers who actually started off in graphic design, And it's just an extension. The photography is,
Yeah,
it's all about composition and laying out and seeing and looking.
Graphic design has helped me as a photographer for those very reasons. Like, it's helped me with composition. It's helped me, like, I would see things, and I still sometimes, well, a lot of times, see things graphically, as I'm, taking the photos. So I'm looking at patterns. I'm looking at the composition.
You play a lot with positive and negative space, and a lot of your photographs, I look at them, and first of all, they're stunning photos. And I'm saying, thank you. That's a great area to drop in text. So you do think as a graphic designer. You do.
I do. I look at stuff sometimes. I'm like, yeah, headline can go here and like an intro graph. Like I do sometimes, and I do love to play in negative space.
But that's also part of composition and understanding design, that you have to play with this positive and negative. And that's just the basis of a lot of the things that go on here. But it carries through beautifully with your work.
Thank you.
One thing I noticed looking at your website is that you're really on top of it. I mean, in the news section, you have, recent work and you stay on top. Is this, can you talk a little bit about, the amount of time that it just takes to be a freelancer? Are you constantly, if it's not developing a story, if you have a day free, do you jump on your website to try to update it, or do you have people that work with you on that? And how do you handle all that?
I do it myself. And I used to design websites as part of my graphic design, like an extension of that. I would design websites for people and companies as a freelancer on the side. But now I don't have time to do websites from scratch, like that. So what has saved me a lot of time is I do use the Adobe portfolio because, I am an Adobe education leader for one. So I use a lot of I use the software to do the work that I do. Right. But portfolio allows me, it's very easy for me to update. So I'm able to do that on the fly. I can do that with my phone, and I can add things to the news section as I go. So it has saved a lot of time for me, because initially it was a lot of work to try to stay on top of that and keep it fresh, keep it current. But now with that, it's very easy for me to update.
That's good
advice.
I could
just ask a question about concerning your website. You work under your name. And you also have, I noticed, and I don't know how to pronounce it, NDEMA.
Yeah. Indame, yes.
What is that about? Because it seems to be like a separate entity of your business. What's the background here?
Yeah, so Indame, first of all, Inde, the beginning of that means God sent. And so my thinking was, I'm doing something that I love, that I'm passionate about. So that's a godsend. And then my last name, May.
Inde, in what language is that? Is that mean?
Swahili.
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
So Indame is the combination. It's like a reminder to me that, this is like a godsend, that I'm doing what I love to do, what I feel is my purpose. So
you're just the co-pilot. Don't let it get to your head.
Right. So that started out because I was doing, I started doing work with a editorial wire service out of Italy called Photo. And they had reached out to me. And this is when I first entered into like the political space of photography. And so Photo reached out to me and said, hey, we love your work. We're looking for someone to cover the White House and, some events that they have going there. Would you be interested in working with us? And so I'm like, that's a no-brainer for me.
You didn't have to think too hard about that one, did you?
No, I didn't. I was like, yeah, I would, after I checked them out.
Let me look at my calendar.
Right. So like, okay. So then they start sending me these, can you cover this event? Can you cover that event? And so this started during the second term of the Obama administration. And so that's when I started going to the White House. And so Indame was pretty much birthed out of thinking initially like well, maybe I want to focus on news coverage, like politics and news and that whole communications within the photography or, realm. And coming from the School of Communications at Howard as well, I was like, you know what? I think maybe I want to look into having my own media company. So that's what that was birthed out of. My name and my website is under my name because as I was starting to do a lot of this work, people started to just associate my name and it became less of the name of the company and more so my name. And it was a lot easier for people to find me.
Regarding the political work and then specifically the White House work, did the agency get credentials for you, or did you have to kind of do that legwork on your own?
I had to do a lot of that legwork on my own because they're all the way in Italy.
Right.
So I had to forge those relationships myself. A lot of that too with the media company helped, with that, because I was able to actually get some credentials through my company.
Gotcha. And can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, I know you mentioned that you follow the news and it's important to do that, but in I guess the very specific world of Washington politics, I mean, what are some of the tricks and the keys to staying vital and getting to where you need to be and having the right contacts? Is it just about, as you discussed before, being an open person, having conversations, meeting people? Yes,
it's a lot of that. It's a lot of being flexible. Going with the flow. You're developing these relationships, and a lot of times what happens is they're the same people who are the wranglers that handle the press, and so they jump around from administration to administration, or different. They pretty much stay within the same space of what it is. So I end up seeing people that work for the Obama administration they were working for somebody else on the campaign trail. Some of the people that work for Obama are working for Biden now. So it's a lot of just being open, building those relationships, doing the work. Because a lot of that is important too, because as you're doing this work, if your work resonates with them and they're like, wow, like that's really good, or you did a great job on that, then people will remember that.
Okay, we are going to take a short break and we come back more with Cheriss May. Stay tuned. This episode of the B&H Photography Podcast is sponsored by Leica Camera. Check out the M10R digital rangefinder from Leica and all of their incredible cameras and lenses by following the link in our show notes. Okay, we are back, and just a quick reminder that this episode of the B&H Photography Podcast is sponsored by Leica Cameras, which leads us to our opening question for part 2 of our interview. You currently have an exhibit at the Leica Gallery. How did that come together? Because your work is really, really varied. How did this affect your selection of images?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I spoke with Paris Chong, who is the manager of the gallery out in Los Angeles. And so, she said, I love your work. And, I think we would love to exhibit it here, at the gallery. And so I wasn't sure like what I was going to exhibit, to be honest with you, because my work is varied. So I was like, okay, it could go a number of directions. It could be a number of things. But I started to think about if you look on my website, it says that I connect to the soul of those I photograph. And so when I looked at that, I was like, that's it. I can, this exhibit, this show is going to be about that soul connection. It's going to go into explore. So in the varied assignments, commissions and things that I do, it's still that soul connection for me. So that's where that theme came from, of the show of soul connection. And then that way I could explore the various things.
Did you edit these images yourself? Because self-editing is really, really tough. Or did you have a group of photographs that you went over with other people whose judgment you trust?
So what I did was, based off of that theme, I made a selection of images, and then I met virtually with Paris from the gallery, and together we curated the 25 images that are in that show.
And you have 25 images there. Now, I was looking at it's a mixture of color and black and white. And a lot of them have what we were talking about earlier, that positive, negative space composition thing going on, which is really, really strong. You do black and white, you do color. And given the choice, which do you prefer? Because I have looking at your work, I have a certain preference. I won't go there yet, but I'm just curious to know, when you're shooting, do you have a preference between one over the other? Because there's a difference. No two ways about it.
There is. And I'll say this. Sometimes I see in color and sometimes I see in black and white. For me, it's about that connection. It's about the mood. It's about what's going on. It's about, what I'm feeling when I see it. So even with, going back to Tulsa, I took my monochrome camera, but I also had the color. So I have some images that are black and white and I have some that are color. I just don't see in one way. It's very organic.
Okay, so you are shooting specifically black and white at times, or do you also convert from color when you feel that that's a better choice?
And sometimes I do that as well.
Okay.
But I do have a monochrome camera. I have the Q2 monochrome. And so I specifically took that camera, and I'll take that camera sometimes. Some days I go out with just that. And so I'm shooting the whole time in black and white, strictly in black and white. Now, sometimes there are cases where I may have done it in color and then I'll do post conversion, but there's a difference. And I know that, and I can see that in shooting originally in monochrome versus converting in post.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, I agree with you strongly about that. Yeah.
And do you ever get a request, or does an editor ever say, this one we need color, or do they kind of let you
They don't.
go with your feel? No.
Yeah, okay. They don't. I haven't had an editor to this point, say something like that.
By the way, just between you and I, if you ever have a shoot that's only black and white and somebody says, do you have this in color? I'm pretty good at hand coloring stuff. So just say, yeah, but I just need a few. Just call me. I'll bail you on this one.
Okay. Thank you.
And you mentioned sometimes you go out with just the one camera, but do you, what would be a kit, let's say, if you go out and you don't have a specific plan necessarily? I mean, do you drive? Do you keep a set of lights in your car just in case? I mean, what do you have, for any, let's say, all comers, any kind of emergency situation?
Yeah. So the lights, I'm only bringing those out if I have a portrait commission or assignment. That's when I'll have my lights in the car. And I've really, through the years, as I've grown, my kits have changed and grown, and I've sized down. So I'm able to.
Can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, I'm kind of curious. Yeah, like what you started with, and when you size down, because I think we're all doing that in some degree.
Yeah. The first one I can remember, like kind of lighting kit, it was a continuous light. It had a wooden handle on the back. I can't even remember what brand it was. It had a wooden handle on the back, and it was like a metal like hood around the light. It was just like a regular light bulb you would screw in.
A painter's light, yeah, sure.
A utility lamp, basic utility lamp. Sure, yeah.
Yeah. So I would just, plug it in, turn it on, click, like a lamp, and that was it. From there, I went to the Ellen Chromes, and I was using those for a number of years. And most recently, I started using Profotos. I started out by getting the A1. They've since have like two other versions since the one that when I purchased it. But I started out with an A1, and most recently added a B10 to that.
Yeah, you guys, it's a nice lighting kit for sure. A
Mm-hmm.
question I have about this: do you find it's no big secret that most new cameras these days, you could set the ISOs to ridiculous
Yeah.
sensitivity levels? Are you using less flash because of that? Are you just depending more on available light, or is it just really vary by what's happening in front of you?
Yeah, it depends on what's happening in front of me. Like I would say for Tulsa, I didn't take any lights. I didn't take any. I didn't even take, my small, the A1. I just intended on using available light, period. So that's what I did. So all of those images are available light.
What about cameras? Kind of in the same question. Did you start, with big DSLRs and just kind of work your way to something more? Yeah.
So I started with big DSLRs and to where I am now with the, I have the Q2, the Q2 mono, the SL2. I have a CL. I started out with the CL. I have the CL. I have a M10P.
Oh, wow.
And then
So you're all in
Well, she's got more Leicas than I do. Wow.
I know.
I thought I was terrible. You're good. Wow, okay, I'm impressed.
Cool.
Yeah, so it depends on what it is. Like some days I've gone out with just the M10P, like during the uprisings here in DC, I would just go out with the M10P and that's it.
You were at the insurrection on January 6th, and I'd like to ask a little bit about that, if I may. Specifically, you were barricaded in an office, and you kept working the whole time. I mean, we don't need to go into all the details because it'll probably take a long time. But can you discuss how that happened and how and what work you got out of that? I mean, how did that? I don't mean the work that came from that, but what you shot that day.
Sure. So I was working for Getty, and it was just a typical day of coverage at the Capitol that, I'm used to. Really quiet, really ceremonial. And it just like flipped totally. Like I never expected it. Matter of fact, some of my family and friends were concerned going on because they're like, hey, there's this rally at the White House. Like, please be careful. And I was like, oh, I'm going to be inside the Capitol. Nothing ever happens there. I'm good. I'm not going to be out there. I didn't know that what was out there was coming inside. The Capitol.
Oh, so your assignment was then just to be covering what was going on inside.
The ceremonial vote count.
Right. Okay.
So I got the former Vice President Pence and the Senate staff were coming across to the House chamber to deliver those votes. So it's like the ballot box. And so I remember I was there getting that processional, coming over. And then I went up into the balcony in Statuary Hall, and I was photographing as they were coming back from the House chamber to go back over to the Senate side. And then all hell broke loose because that's when I start seeing the Capitol Police scrambling around and putting a barricade in front of the hall that led to the House chamber. And then I saw one of them draw their gun. And so I was like, okay, so it's not good right now.
And you happened to be near a particular office and you went into it and got barricaded there?
So I was near Congressman Clyburn's office. And when everything broke loose and the Capitol Police heard me and a couple other people up in the balcony, they told us to shelter inside, like get inside and shelter, that they were inside the building.
How much time actually went from that point to the time when, because again, there was a lot of miscommunications, confusion. No one knew what was going on in the next room, let alone, immediately around them. How long was it before you actually felt confident it's okay to get out of here now and get out? When did you get that? How long was it?
Yeah. So I was in Congressman Clyburn's office with his staff for over 2 hours. And we did not feel confident to come out until SWAT and Capitol Police busted through the doors.
And you were working? I mean, did you take your photographer's cap off at any one point, or were you always working?
No. And I think actually that probably helped me to not be focused on everything else. And if I could, because a lot of times I'm so focused on the story and documenting that, I'm not concerned about other things that are going on. And so that probably saved me from thinking about exactly what's going on. Because I can say that my life flashed before my eyes like 3 times in that room.
Right.
Like I just thought it was that was
scared.
it.
You're scared. Yeah. Needless to say. And did that work from that space take on a new I mean, I'm sure it did, but did that work that you shot while you were in there, did that ever get published? And did that work resonate with you? Did it really feel like you were capturing what you needed to do as a photographer?
Yeah, it did get published.
Okay.
And it, for me, it gave me a renewed sense of purpose. And from that experience, I knew like, I'm not going to let that stop me from doing what I'm purposed to do. And I'm going to continue to document. I'm going to continue to cover democracy. I'm going to continue to tell those stories of people who are doing things that they're passionate about and within their purpose. And so that to me renewed my sense of I'm doing the right thing. I'm where I'm supposed to be.
Well, that's a good feeling to have. That's great.
Yeah.
So then let's jump over to talking about your work as a professor, because you're fortunate to be able to teach at your alma mater at Howard.
Yes.
And you're teaching photography, I'm assuming, or is it journalism? Is it what do you do? And what would you like to speak about that aspect of your work?
Sure. So I am an adjunct professor at Howard University in the School of Communications, where I once went to school. And I teach a class called Visual Communications, which is in our media, TV, film department. And the focus of my class is storytelling. So it's exactly what I do. So I'm able to bring in my experience to the classroom and to the students, and to encourage them to find their voices and to realize the power in the story and the power in telling your stories and documenting those things.
And how long have you been doing that?
Oh my gosh. Like 18 years.
Oh, a long time. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, something I'm kind of curious about is that you've been teaching there for 18 years. Now, a lot has happened in terms of media and coverage in 18 years, and the way stories were put together and created and covered has changed dramatically, mostly due to social media. And it's that much easier to get out there and make your points heard. Now, it might only be 5 people that hear it, but yes, you do have an opportunity. Everybody literally has an open mic, and the item and the device that they're talking into to get that sound out is also a camera. So communications is dramatically different than it was when you started out, and even more so if you go back 20, 30, 40 years. It seems to me that to break out from the masses of people who now have a public podium is that much more difficult. Do you have any tips for people, specifically your students, who all of them obviously have something to say and they have the tools to say it and get it out there? How do you succeed these days to get your voice heard over all of these voices?
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing I can say is after the murder of George Floyd, you had more people who were listening, who were open to listen, and who were open to hearing different stories and different voices. So this was the time, and still is the time, to be able to, to get your voice out there and to tell those stories. And so for the students, a lot of what they do is they have blogs. Some of them actually have YouTube channels where they've started kind of really their own like news channels, really, where they're going out and reporting. And we also at Howard, we have a news service. So we have Howard University News Service. So a lot of what they're doing, these stories, is published on the news service. And the news service has a relationship with the NNPA, which is a news organization for the Black press. And so there are over 200 publications that are a member of this association of the Black press, and they actually pick up stories from the news service that's published across the country.
That's huge. Okay.
Yeah.
That's huge.
And do you encourage your students to use their phones as a camera or whatever they have handy, as it were?
Phones have become mobile studios, really. So we have these like kind of backpack media kits where they can plug in external mics and different things like that to use their phone, because sometimes you see things when you're not going out on assignment or prepared to get something, but you just come across something.
So I kind of wanted to follow up about the organizations that you're involved with, and how does that play into your overall work? I mean, in terms of just connections and finding assignments or getting your work out there.
Yes, most definitely. And that's something that I tell students or people who ask for advice on how to get work, how to break in, and different things like that, because I spoke earlier about this, how relationships are really important when doing this work. So these organizations like WPAL, Women Photojournalists of Washington, Women Photograph, Black Women Photographers, Diversify, Authority Collective, it's so on and so on, and NABJ, National Association of Black Journalists. All these organizations are good in building relationships. In these organizations, there are events and opportunities to meet people. And some people, you end up forging these relationships, but they become almost like co-conspirators in getting stories out, because you're forging relationships with people who are writers, reporters, broadcasters. And also editors are members of these organizations as well. So that is a way to get to know some editors of publications. And they're able to get to know you on a personal level.
Did you ever have, when you were just starting out, did you have any, I don't know what the word I'm looking for, did you have doubts about your work? Did you have any inhibitions, I should say, to getting your work out and showing it?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how did you get over that? I mean,
sure.
Yeah. Is it a matter of just getting good feedback and developing relationships, or how do you get over that?
Yeah. Thankfully, I was raised to not be deterred from, a few no's. So, the way my parents raised my brother and myself was to do your best. Always put your best foot forward, no matter what you're doing, how small or large. And don't let a no turn you away or turn you around or stop you from what you know is right or what you know needs to be done. And that there's always another way. If a door is closed, there's a window. The front door is closed, there's a back door, there's a side door. So that's just the way I was raised. So that is in my thinking. That is a part of me, so that I didn't let those no's stop me from doing what I was passionate about or what I felt like that I just knew needed to be done.
Okay, Cheriss, we're hitting an hour right now, and it's been absolutely wonderful speaking to you. Aside from the Leica show, do you have any other projects coming up, any shows that are going to be opening up in the near future, and any other things that we should be notified about?
Sure. And first of all, thank you, John, Alan, and Jason, B&H, for having me today for this discussion. I really appreciate it. So in addition to the Leica show that's through August 2nd, I am a part of a outdoor photo festival called Eyes on Main Street in Wilson, North Carolina. And this is the 7th edition of this festival, and it will be October 30th through March 30th, 2022.
Okay.
Right. October 30th of this year through March 30th of 2022. And so it's an international outdoor street photography festival, and I have a piece that's in it, and it's all along downtown historic Wilson, North Carolina.
Nice.
Yeah.
Also, websites, Instagram. Where can people
Sure.
catch your work?
Yes, definitely. So my website is easy. It's my first and last name. So that's CherissMay.com. And my social media is really easy. It's my first and last name, Cheriss May. So same as the website. And I have links on my website where you can connect to me on social media as well.
And again, all of this is going to be on our show notes. If you miss it and you want to catch up to it, it's all easy to find there, and will all be presented there. Again, Cheriss, thank you so much for joining us today. Your work's wonderful, and your insights are equally wonderful.
Thank you so much.
If you enjoy listening to our show and want to be up on the latest episode, or perhaps go back and listen to any of the 250 plus episodes on our online archive, all you have to do is head on over to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you sign up for podcasts, and enter B&H Photography Podcast into the search field, and boom, you are a member of the club. You can also find us on the B&H Explorer website and on the B&H Photography Podcast Facebook group page. That's a wrap of another fine show. My name is Alan Weitz, and on behalf of John Harris and Jason Tables, thank you so much for tuning in today.